Hello, friends, family, and keepers of the faith, to another Del Boy weekend blog. Yes, this one is labelled Year 2 Blog 21, or if we're counting in legacy numbers, Blog 73, and it's dated 16th of July 2023. And I keep mentioning it, as I always do. I'm surprised that after 73 weeks, I'm still here, still doing this weekly blog. I hope that the intention of my blog, which is to leave a legacy for my nephew and niece, pays off. I keep doing it for several reasons. For them, obviously. My mother will get involved at some point because I think they also need to be able to think about how she looks and, more importantly, how she sounded. Because, as I mentioned in one other blog before, I'm starting to lose what my dad sounded like. It's a bit strange, but we're now 6-7 years down the line from my father dying, and even though he'll appear in a dream on occasion, and he's talking, I'm not so sure if that's his voice or not anymore. Strange one. Anyway, the weather's nice today. Sunny, very windy though. Yesterday was atrocious. I've got some, if anybody has seen my garden video, I was showing some plants off, and there was some gladioli starting to pop up, and gladioli grow really tall, up to around about my chest height here. I'm 5'10", 11. So they go quite high. They're starting to bud, but without proper garden sticks and garden twine to keep them attached to the sticks, they bend. And with the wind yesterday, wow, didn't they bend over? I've just going to give an apology right now in that I've not been very well. I've had a very lack of energy. I felt dizzy the last 2 days. Some of these things have not been as any surprise to anybody because I've been feeling like that for about a year and a half, but I'm talking about beyond the norm of what I've recognised previously. And from that perspective, I'm not quite sure what my energy levels are going to be like today. So I'm going to sort of like take it slow and ease into things. And I hope my memory is clear enough for me to answer all the questions, which I love to do. Yeah, it's not been good. I've had 2 showers this morning. I was sweating all last night. Got very little sleep. That's probably why my hair's such a bloody mess. But anyway, you know how we start. We start with the news, and we'll move on from there. So it's been a bit of a packed week, actually, really, this week. But I've written down some notes. I hope I can read my writing again as normal. The war, because we always mention the Ukraine war, and we will do until it ends. Zelensky secures fresh US military aid at the G7 summit. Yes, we had a G7 summit this week. Joe Biden announced a package of $375 million to Kiev, stating that they were doing all they can to strengthen the Ukraine defences. However, the British Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, said at the summit that... I can't read my writing. Yes, that he wanted Ukraine, that its allies wouldn't... Yeah, he wanted that he wanted Ukraine to accept that our allies, the US, etc., were not Amazon, and Kiev needed to show greater gratitude for our donations. Yeah, sorry that was a bit scattered. I can't read my writing, and this is where I was saying I'm feeling a bit dizzy. It amused me a little bit because they showed all these politicians at the G7 summit. They were talking about all their stories. They showed Zelensky going from place to place, sitting at a desk with the other politicians with so many guards around him. It was unbelievable. And one of the stories that came out of it was this, what's his name? Ben Wallace, yeah, reenacted to the press that he went on a 3-hour drive with Zelensky. At the end of the 3-hour drive, where pretty much no talking really occurred, at the very end he presented him with a list of things that they would like to have for the war. And I don't know what it is, but he must have sort of said a flippant remark and said, "We're not Amazon," which in my head is really funny, but to Zelensky, it wouldn't have been as funny, which meant that our Prime Minister had to sort of apologise for that. I just found it very funny because, no, we're not Amazon. You know, I could just imagine Zelensky going, "Yeah, can I have that tank? Can I have that bazooka? I want that jet. Can I have it for Tuesday? Prime delivery, please." It just amused me in a probably not so funny way, really, as it should be. But anyway, so we move on anyway, just from that funny remark. Virus, yeah. So apt because of how I'm feeling at the moment. A killer virus sweeping through Europe will almost certainly reach the UK. Infections are spreading across Europe at a fast rate. Virus, and this is what it's called, Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, has already killed in Iraq. Professor James Wood has stated it's when, not if. It is transmitted by ticks carried over by migrating birds. So yes, something else for us to now fear over. Got enough of that. But being as, I think the thing that stood out in this article was it said it's a matter of when, not if. That when somebody makes a statement like that, then I saw my ears prick up. It's like, right, you've got my attention now. And I've read up, and it is a small amount of deaths. It is a horrible set of conditions that happen when you get it. And let's hope it's not another pandemic. I don't think it will be. Whenever somebody comes out with something like this, I tend to find that they sort of burn out quite quickly. And the last one, which will come as no surprise to anybody in England, will be the Hugh Edwards reveal that's been in the newspapers all this week. On the Friday last week, so I did probably mention it in my blog, there was an article spread by The Sun saying that another presenter was to be named and shamed for buying explicit sexual photographs. Now, this sparked off no end of stuff. By the time we got to Monday, Radio 5 and all the newspapers were, and the TV at the beginning, in the morning, like Jeremy Vine and so forth, were all in the firing line saying that they'd had a horrible weekend, people accusing them as being the secret presenter that nobody knew about that's been buying all this perverse photographs. And finally, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, the presenter was named, and it was Hugh Edwards, a well-respected and head of BBC News for a number of years. I mean, the last broadcast I remember seeing him was The Death of Our Queen. He headed that presentation. So let me just go through this. It says, presenter named on Wednesday for allegedly paying a teenager more than $35,000 for sex explicit photos. His wife confirms Hugh's mental illness problems and is standing by him. Now, this sparked off also a lot of stuff on YouTube. I don't, as I've always said, I don't generally have an opinion. I don't have a strong one, or and so forth. The news is really here to date stamp. But I will say this: the words that were used in all media that I saw was alleged. Now, I worked in the probation service for a number of years. I now work for a higher up of that probation service, and have to accept that I've seen so many offenders and worked with the probation staff that if something is alleged, it means proved not true, that it's speculation. And from that point of view, you don't name that person at that particular point in time. I'm a big believer that once something starts going down the route of we now know and we are going down this route, that's the point where naming and shaming comes in. I think it was a number of years back, I think Cliff Richard was in a similar situation where an article came out. An hour later, after it being on the internet, helicopters were flying over Cliff Richard's house. He was then dragged through all sorts of papers about stuff, sexual stuff, alleged again, to which it was not proved, and it did damning damage to him. I mean, it really did. It's a career-killing thing when you get it wrong. From that point of view, my opinion is, if something is alleged, then let the investigation do its course, because if you start naming and shaming and going down a route, you'll destroy the investigation. Destroy it totally. The police won't know where to turn. There are a lot of scammers out there that will then pile on more pressure and information. Oh yeah, this happened to me as well. All of a sudden, the doors flood open and it's like, I'm going to start coming forward. Now, a lot of people have claimed that happens because they feel strength in numbers, that they didn't want to come forward because it would be just them and they couldn't take it going through the courts and so forth. And I totally get that. But I also totally get that there are a lot of people out there that will just join the bandwagon, that they're so clever that they can manipulate everything and bring in the most awful things that are not true, and it clouds judgment. So I'm going to end it there. Like I say, the only strong opinion I have is if something is alleged, try not to interfere and let the investigation get to a point where it's legal for them to talk who it is. You don't want to destroy a person's life on a speculation. I haven't ever been in that situation, but I have seen other colleagues not get suspended, but can become under investigation for something that they said at work that somebody took the wrong way, and then all of a sudden everybody's whispering behind the person's back, and then when it comes to the actual meeting that they have, it's all been blown out of proportion and they shake hands and they go to one side. It must be the most distressing thing to happen, and I hate to think what it would be like. So that's the end of the news, and we move forward now to the shout-outs. And I love doing the shout-outs. The shout-outs are wonderful because it gives me the opportunity to say thank you to these people that have spent time writing a comment or watching my videos and expressing their opinion on it. So this week the shout outs are Martroid, Seb's Place, Highlander, Charlie Angel, David Retro Games Played Badly, Robert's Retro Gaming, Milfy Swinbuckle, Jambon, Paul Patrick, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Denny, Steve's Gaming, Danny Jones, Doug Scullery, Carl Todd, and Magda K. Still can't pronounce your surname, but Magdalena, I got that right, but I'm going to prove that I can do it by getting the whole first and surname right. And I just want to thank all of those. If I've missed anybody, I'm sorry. I did keep looking to see whether I'd missed anybody through the videos that I've done this week. I don't think I've missed anybody. So hopefully I've done pretty well there. Fingers crossed. I'm just going to have a bit of product placement. Running out of oranges again, by the way. It's amazing. I go into the supermarket, tons of them at the beginning when I don't want them. Get close to the end of the week and I go, oh, I'm a bit low. I think I'll stock up. Starting to run out again. God. Nightmare. Anyway, let's get on with the questions. Always a fun aspect. I hope you guys like the questions bit, because if you haven't asked a question, I can probably think that this is the longest, most boring bit of the whole blog. But the questions to me are the fun aspect, because A, you make me think on my feet, and B, they open up probably something about me that my nieces and nephews want to know. That's the whole point, really. Instead of me thinking of a topic, you're raising a topic that I can have an output on that they can listen to. So thank you so much for doing that. So we'll start off, no particular order, with Doug Scullery. And it's got, hi Del, thanks for answering my questions. Here's some topics for the next blog. Topics, oh my God. Right. Was scarcity the essential ingredient which made gaming back in the day so special, leading to all the nostalgia? Most people had access to one system, not many games. It made us cherish those experiences all the more. And if that's the case, why would anyone, say 20 years from now, have any nostalgia for 2023 games, TV, etc.? Everything is on demand and instantly available. Interesting. Scarcity. Was games scarce back in the day? I think I know what you mean in regards to the fact that now we've got emulation where we don't need to even have the machines. We've got a lovely, clever, beautiful device in the Mister that can basically hardware emulate machines that we've had in the past. What you're saying is, in the past, we couldn't afford to have all the different computers and consoles. We generally had one. But I didn't see that as a problem, because I had friends, and they also had computers, and not necessarily were they the one that I had. So I could go round theirs and play on something totally different. And then, back then, shops had the computers and consoles in their front window, and that would entice us lads to want to go in. And we'd see these computers displayed, sometimes with just a slideshow or a game running, in a tracked mode. And other times you could type your little program in, and we'd be very juvenile and go in there and put swear words and have it going all across the screen with a flashing border and all sorts of stuff. But I take your point that with streaming, with all of the sales which we've just gone through with Steam, with all of the charity donations, buy this pack of games and 30% will go to charity or whatever, we now have such a choice that you can't see the wood for the trees on what you want to play, and I fall into that trapping. So I understand what you're talking about. But I struggle over Scarcity because though even in a sleepy town like mine, we had two computer shops. Um, Boots were selling them as well, and W.H. Smith, which is pretty much in every town back then in the 80s. So I don't think things were that scarce. There was stuff that you had to order right at the very beginning. I remember my Amiga days when I had my A1000. There was literally nothing for it. There was Workbench, a lot of expensive production software like Deluxe Paint and so forth. And then Fred Fish public domain discs was all I had until games caught up. You see what I mean? So, yeah, that was a point of scarcity that I'm concentrating on with your question. So, I'm going to say that scarcity wasn't the essential ingredient. It's one of many. The problem I've got now is that even though I've been in IT for 30 odd years, and I've had very few hard drives die on me, I wonder sometimes whether that's going to occur again and I won't be able to pick up everything that I've lost with that hard drive fail. What I mean by that is that I was asked to look for a Defender type clone that was a work in progress 15 years ago. And it's on YouTube. And if you search for the game, as in you'd like to play it yourself, you can't find it. The link is now dead in YouTube. Everybody in there that comments about the video saying what a great game it is, can you tell me where can I get this game? Where can I find it? It's gone. Now, during the time, 15 years ago, somebody would have downloaded that game. But they're not on the internet. I couldn't find it in Internet Archive. I looked quite some time for my friend. And I come to the conclusion that it might have even changed its name. That video was 6 months before it actually officially got released. And it probably changed its name. Because it was a work in progress. So I never got to see whether it got finished. So from that point of view, I'm going to say scarcity is part. And that's all for that. You've asked another question. Early hype for the Commodore 64 promised arcade quality graphics, which in my opinion didn't actually happen for many years. But what early games for the Commodore 64 would boast genuinely stunning graphics? Are there any? I'm talking about the 1983 era. Okay, so you've mentioned a specific era. And I agree with you that Commodore, along with any computer manufacturer, were talking high bit graphics, colour, sound, massive amounts of memory, expandability, all of these words, all buzzwords that make you go, ooh, gotta have that. And I was enticed with the Commodore 64. I had my VIC-20, so I knew the Commodore product. I knew what this new Commodore 64 was going to look like, and it was so similar to the VIC-20 that I would have been familiar with it. It just would have been more powerful. It seemed the natural progression. And the problem with a new machine, therefore, is how do you program it? It's got all this new power. How do I utilize that power? And I've come across that problem myself a number of times. I remember I bought a Wacom touch tablet to do editing of comics that I scanned so I could get rid of things like color bleed and stuff. And this pad and pen enabled me to draw. And I was going, I can draw all freehand and everything now. When I tried, couldn't think of anything to draw. It was almost like you've given me so much power and my brain has gone blank on what to do with it. And that's happened with a number of things that I've bought. It's like, oh, the things I could do with this thing, and then when I've got it, I don't know what to do with this thing. It's a bit like that. You want some examples, which is quite easy for me actually, because I had the Commodore 64 within that first year of its UK release. So it was released in '83 in the States. It was a little bit later over in the UK. It was in the same year for a number, but I don't think it really got its official till about a couple of months into '84. However, saying that, I've got some titles which I think definitely go beyond what was available on anything other than a console. Okay? And remember, the computer is different to a console. And I would say one of those is BC's Quest for Tires, which definitely came out on the Intellivision and the Coleco and so forth. And those graphics on there on the Commodore 64 equally matched those consoles, possibly even a little bit cleaner. I always loved the beauty of the fact that the Commodore 64 had quite a crisp screen, even if you had a telly. So BC's Quest for Tires is one. Beachhead. Who can forget Beachhead? Now, you may think to yourself, yeah, but they're static little ships that go through a minefield, a buzzy little tank that's going along that looks like a matchbox. But there was the airplane scene with the planes coming across the sea and you with your gun, and it was the sound effects, plus the graphics were not that bad, that made you take the whole thing as a whole and go, wow, yeah, now that's a game. And it really was 3 or 4 stages, so that's definitely one that I would say, when it said stunning graphics, I would agree. Yeah, stunning graphics. Super Pipeline comes to mind. Super Pipeline comes to mind because the tunes were catchy, but when it comes to the graphics, they were very cartoony. They made them a bit blocky, but with the graphics of the water going through the pipes and the creatures not being too badly animated. I mean, okay, there was only a couple of frames of animation. The main character with his little buddy that followed him along was great. And there was these little cutscenes, I think, as well. Or was that in the second one? I can't quite remember. But I would definitely say Super Pipeline. And then, just as an honorary mention, Attack of the Mutant Camels, which had been seen before on an Atari 2600. When it ported across to the Commodore, very little was changed, but the sound was a bit more crisper. The glowy graphics were a little bit sharper. It had an arcade quality because the scrolling was lovely. And it was hectic in its its firing ability in that game. It was not easy. It was not terrifically hard. It was that middle ground. So I mentioned it as an honorary mention is because I don't think you can ever turn around and say stunning. But as a whole, with the mountain range and all of that sort of stuff, it definitely was functional to better than what was seen on other consoles at the time. Apart from the Atari 800 version, which I think is better. So there you are. I've given you 4 examples. I think if I was thinking what Mainmeister what he would say, I think he'd put Beam Rider in. I think that's one of his favourite games. Again, could you call that stunning graphics? Possibly not. But again, you can't take away the quality of the game. So, the Commodore 64 had a bit, not a rough start, but a start that would probably be a little bit difficult to live up to the hype, say. And thank you very much, Doug. I hope that's giving you some answers. And we move on to Steve's gaming. And, you know, my friend Steve, we always do my Steve salute to Steve. Salute, you get, love you to bits, mate. You know, one of my, one of the nicest people I've ever spoken to. And I love your work and your channel and everything. So always glad to bring that in. Hi, Dal. Sorry about my message last week. No idea why it keeps getting deleted. No, I don't think anybody knows what this damn logarithm of YouTube is and why this happens. On Elton John, I'm afraid I'm not a fan. His music doesn't do anything for me, so it's each to their own thing. So I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked our mutual friend Mainmeister, and that's autographs. He was talking about paying for them. So, is there anyone past or present, gaming or not, who you'd happily pay £25 for their autograph? I have 4 or 5 I would, but won't bore you with them. Take care and love to your mum. Thank you. I'll pass that on to my mum. She'll appreciate that, I'm sure. And a tricky one, because I've never been that up on autographs. I have in the comic industry. And I loved, I mean, the only one I can think of right now is if he was still alive, he hadn't died a couple of weeks ago. John Romita Sr., I'd have loved to have met him and got a signature and selfie with him. I've got plenty of signatures on him. People have been to conventions over in the States and got them for me. And of course, you can buy from collectors authenticated passwords of his, stuff that he's done that went for sale for charity, and you could buy it in a charity bid and have your own signature by him. So I would definitely, if he was still alive, say, yeah, take my 25 quid. I want your signature, but I want to speak to the guy. Yes, definite. When it comes to autographs, I've got them, quite a few, but I've never paid for them. Not that I can think of. I've got Elton John's. I've got Colin Baker's. Got Tom Baker's. Got Peter Davison's. I've forgotten her name now. That's bad, isn't it, when I've got her signature? The lady that was in, I can't even remember the TV show now. Oh, that's going to annoy me. Farscape. Yeah. She was all in blue paint. Bloody hell. I didn't have to buy her signature, but she did say that she'd only do a signature if you bought one of her products, and she makes soap. So, yes, I bought some soap. So I suppose I did buy a signature. I've got a number of signatures. Would I pay 25 quid? I think I might pay 25 quid for a laugh for William Shatner's. Yeah. Before he goes to the galaxy in the sky, I'd like his signature. Yeah. Can't think of anybody else, buddy. Sorry. But I think I've named a few. You now certainly know that what signatures I've got. You already know my F1 signatures. I've told you about the fact that I used to go to my mate and we used to be in the pit lane. So I met quite a few of the drivers and got their signatures. So they'll forever be cherished by me. Might even show them at some point. Gets to the point where I need to sort of like display and show off these things, and my niece, no, don't chuck them out, they're worth something. You know what I mean? So anyway, salute, Steve, thank you so much. We get to Denny. Right, I'm gonna need some drink for this. He writes essays. Okay, think I'm ready. Cinema or going to the pictures these days is something I don't do anymore. The overall experience feels so flat these days. I wondered as a kid as I watched The Land That Time Forgot, Warlords of Atlantis, and I'll never forget the first time I watched Star Wars and its opening scenes. Most productions are littered with poor scripts, horrendous acting, and directionless directors these days. Most productions are bubblegum, throwaway rubbish, like that Barbie movie. I'd rather watch a film at home and relax. I have Dolby Vision and Atmos with my TV and soundbar, so what more do I need in reality? And thank you very much for that opinion, Denny. It mirrors sort of my own. I mentioned last week that I don't want cinemas to die. If you do that, then money is not going into a product that is supposed to be seen beyond the TV experience. And the TV experience and the cinema experience have been at logheads for years and years and years. And the line now between going to the cinema and TV is so minute now that people don't want to go to the cinema anymore. And the cost of it is horrendous. There was somebody that I read that went to see Indiana Jones and spent 15, 16 quid on the ticket alone, let alone the popcorn. And when you consider that the cinema, the joyous days of us going to the cinema, whether it be with your friends or whether it was with family, means that it's 15 quid each. So if it was a family um, of two kids, that's four people. I mean, that's £60 without going into the food. And then, of course, the kids are going to go, I want popcorn, I want drink, blah, 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 blah. That's another 15 quid probably each for them. And all of a sudden, you've spent £100 and you saw a 2 hour film that in a couple of months' time is going to be seen on the TV. But I do list the pros of the cinema. In the cinema, you're not disturbed by your phone. You know, they say turn it off. I turn mine off. Well, pretty much. Um, to the, of course, I do need to be in contact sometimes, so I need text messaging. So there has been times where the phone is on silent, and I'll only look for the text message that I'm expecting. But most of the time, I follow the rules. So I'm with you with most of what you say there, Denny. LFC and his question about Wales. Llandudno is my favourite place to visit, and I'll be there soon for 3 days. I recommend anyone who's never been to go at least once. It's the best place in Wales. And yeah, we had a little chat, didn't we? And I said that I think the closest I've been is when I went to the Brecon Hills. Because I went to Brecon in 2005, 6. I remember I had to go through Cheltenham and Gloucester to get there. And if you keep going past the Brecon, you do get to Prestatyn, I think. So I've been along that lovely countryside, by the way, a number of times, and totally agree with you when it comes to Wales. Thanks for answering my question again, mate. Jeff Minter was definitely the best when it came to getting sound effects out of the VIC-20. So much so he used them in his last but one production, Moose Life. There are so many games I could mention, but why mention them when I can put them all in a video? Haha. Thanks also once again for plugging my Invincible Island video. Yes, you told me the other day what your next production is going to be, and I'm wholly looking forward to it. I love those types of videos. I will, of course, give it a shout when it's out. Love it. I'm going to move now down to your question because I've got a funny feeling it's going to be a complex one. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm going to read the bit before it first because that's very pertinent. I listened to Bernard Herrmann's Mysterious Island soundtrack on YouTube. Been a while. An absolute wonderful soundtrack to listen to if you're into your soundtracks. So the reason I've mentioned that is his soundtracks are very important to me. There's another little project I'm about to start. If I feel I've got the power to do so, if I feel I've got that ambition in me to do something as complex as what I'm thinking at the moment, and I'll probably mention it at the end, but it is soundtrack related. So your question, Denny. Secret Wars. If they decided to do a film based on Secret Wars, who would you like to write it, direct it? Would you like the film to be a carbon copy of the comic? Who would you like to play the Beyonder? And finally, as I know Spider-Man is your favourite character of yours, so how would you like to see him portrayed? More or less serious? Nothing too heavy this week. Good question. And I'm not very good with names and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to go slowly here. When it comes to the writing, I've noticed that they've got some very, very, very experienced script writers. And I do see at the end there is some collaboration with the original comic creators. But I'm wondering whether that's enough, because they do go off in tangents. They don't follow the story totally. And sometimes the message gets lost. So I'm going to say I'd like to see more comic input. I'd like to see some writers step in and work with proper Hollywood script writers to come up with a script that not only appeases the fans, but also appeases a new user who's just going in to be entertained by a story at the cinema. So I'm going to just not mention names, but I'm going to say comic industry and script writers of a high caliber. Direct it. Difficult. I suppose it's easy to mention Spielberg because it is a grand project. Secret Wars. And he's done science fiction. But Ridley Scott has also done science fiction. And that particular storyline, which is a very, very early, what they call summer event for a comic. It was in the 80s, 85, 6, and it was Marvel's only second of what they call an event. As it was only their second event, the first one being Contest of Champions. You have to admit that the visuals would be astounding. So I'm going to go with either Ridley Scott or Steven Spielberg. Who would I have playing the Beyonder? Now, this is going to infuriate people that don't know what I'm talking about here, but the Beyonder, okay, was a godlike character in the film, in the book Secret Wars, that basically took all these heroes and these villains to battle each other to see who is stronger, good or evil. And it never got resolved. It was a stalemate, I think. Spoilers. But the Beyonder is a child. He looks at things as black and white. He wants to understand the complexities of what makes a human part of the human race and what is humankind. So you're looking at someone with an innocence, but also a malevolent being, because he's a god. And I'm going to come up with a weird name now. What comes to mind is Patrick Duffy from Dallas and The Man from Atlantis. You ever seen The Man from Atlantis? He comes across as very innocent. He's... what's the word? Well, innocent, I think, is the word. Naive. That facial expression of... I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. That sort of thing, you know? And the greatest person that I could think of who was always like that was Bill Bixby, playing David Banner in the Hulk TV series. I don't think Patrick Duffy would come across as malevolent, which is why it's a downside for that particular character. But I'm trying to think of someone who's got an innocence, but he's also got a presence. That's a bit difficult. So I might have to come back on that one. So sorry. And I hope that answered your question, Denny. I'm going to have some more product. I am starting to get dizzy again. I'll move to my friend Jambon. Thank you, Denny, by the way. Hi, Del. Thanks for another good blog. You got me thinking with your comment about how you wanted to get back to your roots a bit and start listening more to your soundtracks. I've been neglecting music and books over the last few years, as gaming and watching telly just seems so much easier after a long day. You've inspired me to make an effort to recapture some old interests. Thanks. Starting from tomorrow. Now that'll amuse Mainmeister, because he came out with a comment and I sort of agreed with him that says, why do people say from tomorrow? Why not from then? That whole point. And this was in the context of Christmas, where people were saying, I'm going to go on a diet on New Year and so forth. I understand it. To him, he didn't. And I understand that as well, because my mate, Mainmeister, such a nice bloke, is a go-getter. He's the sort of person that goes, don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. I'm pretty sure that probably is something his mum and dad's told him all the way through life. But anyway, I'm digressing again. Let's move forward. You asked how I was getting on with my new computer, and it's fair to say it's not been used to its full potential. The last few weeks have mainly been spent getting all my emulators set up, so it's not had to deal with anything more complex than GameCube. Anyway, I have a related question for Dell's IT help desk, if you don't mind. My help desk. Oh, God. Thank you so much. Yes, I am open to help desk calls. Question. How dusty do you let your machines get? And do you have any tips for cleaning them out? I've been horrified at the amount of dust that's already made its way inside my PC. It's got one of these stupid glass panels, so I can't just pretend it's not there, and it's bugging me. When I opened it up, I found a cobweb. Feel free to ignore this if it's too boring, and thanks for keeping us entertained. No, my pleasure, matey. You'd think when you're looking around that I'm not very clean, and I have to say, yes, apologies. My room is always going to be like that, because it's function over design, and I need to have things around me. If I've used a screwdriver set once this week, I think to myself, I bet you next week I need it again, and I have trouble putting it away because I've got nowhere to put it. So you have to excuse things like the mess with me. But when it comes to PCs, we had policies and rules at school, at work, and I followed those through all my life. And this particular PC down here, which I built in 2012, but obviously it's had newer parts as put in, regularly gets cleaned. But you have to sort of like get rid of the things that can cause damage to yourself. Now, the one thing you don't want to do is use a Hoover. That's a no-no for a start. If I could give any piece of advice, I would say you want to buy the reverse of a Hoover, a blower, and you can buy these lovely air blowers from Amazon. They're either battery or mains powered, depends on how you want to do it. They have nozzles on, so they've got very small holes to go through, or big wide vents like this, and you've got speed control, mild, medium, high, and they blow air. And when you're blowing the air through the system, then you're releasing the dust, and you're not causing static. Okay, so those are great, and they're much better than canned products that you buy that you use once. You think, yeah, I used half of it. I'll use the other half in a bit, and 2 months pass down the line, you get the can out, and nothing happens, because that's how gas is in these canisters. How it releases the product, because it is just air. At the end of the day. So I'm a big fan of blowers. The other thing is I use a soft brush, and I'd use the soft brush before using the blower. So get a paintbrush that's got a long enough handle, um, not too bristly, but very soft bristles, and dislodge all of that dust, and then use the blower. Okay. Now, depending on how long it's been since you've done anything in cleaning, but you want to use what's it called? Isopropyl, 99.9% alcohol cleaning solution. If you use that with a brush over things, I tend to find it cleans it lovely, and the blower will dry it very quickly, and it's safe for electrical parts. So that's something again to consider. But it's prevention, which is incredibly hard to do, even for the cleanest of rooms. And I buy a sheet of something called dust mesh or pollen mesh, and you cut it into the dimensions that you need. Now my PC's a tower, and it has grids, and it's holding plastic clips that push in, and lights can shine through it. Now that's because in 2012 things were very big for that sort of thing, but it has mesh, and not only is there a plastic mesh that's quite large with its holes, it has a mesh behind it that's incredibly thin, and it's almost like it can collect pollen dust. And if you get that sort of thing, you can release the clips and pull the mesh out and chuck that mesh away, or again do a similar thing with blowing, the stuff out of the mesh, and use it again. Mesh is brilliant because it's the fine particles of dust, and it's those things that can cause the problems. So I hope that's helped. Those are the things that I buy. Those are the things on how I clean stuff. Everybody has a different way of how they clean stuff. Do it regularly enough, but not over regular. I mean, you don't have to do this every week. But depending on the positioning, whether it's on a carpet or whether it's on a plinth on a carpet, whether it's on a wooden floor, whether it's raised under a desk, or it's on a, it's got its own mount to the underside of your desk, whatever method you use, just remember, if you have it out of sight, generally that's where dust builds up. I know that much. So salute to you, Jambon, and thank you very much for the question. Okay, Highlander. Hi, Dell. I haven't been around for quite some time. Been really busy. I've just tuned into your latest blog, listened to it while decorating. Glad you're getting back into the swing of things at work. Question for the next blog. If you could host a Live Aid style gig, which bands, artists would you invite to play? Could be artists who are alive or dead. Cheers, and don't lose your head. Thanks, Highlander. And I hope your acquisition of Highlander from me is still in good condition for you. Lovely film. Thank you so much. And to answer your question, I'm not very good at naming things on the top, but I have got an opinion, and that is that if I was going to do a Live Aid type concert, Live Aid was everybody to everybody. It was everything to everybody, and that meant bands and acts that not necessarily would you buy or want, but you appreciated them while they were there. A bit like Glastonbury. It's a hopscotch of definitely people you want to listen to, and others that you could give a care less about. So the only thing I know that is I'd probably put a theme to my Live Aid. I'd probably start it off in the 70s and go through the years, 80s, 90s to now. And I would end with now. And everybody coming on at the end. And I wouldn't go back further than the 70s. I wouldn't go into the 60s and 50s because we've had those. We've had those times. And those people are now retired or dead. But 70s, 80s, 90s, and now, I definitely have things like, if I could, things like The Specials and Hazel O'Connor and, you know, Adamant and Madness. And when it comes to the 90s, Blur, Oasis, Pulp. And then, you know, into the 2000s, you know, the newer acts that I'm not so familiar with. And that's because I'm a people pleaser and I want to please everybody. And I want everybody to listen to something in the past that they might never have heard of that's still relevant because they live in the modern age, and the other way round. I want people to appreciate the stuff in the modern age that's equally lovely to listen to and nice for people of an older generation to enjoy. So I have named some bands there and artists. Obviously Elton John. I'd have Rod Stewart there, Rolling Stones. You know, but I think the theme is important. I wouldn't go down the way it was done before. I'd go down a different route and have it done this way. And I think the closest to that was, I think Danny Boyle opened the Olympics in a similar style. He wanted to show off London and through the generations. That's why he showed off the fashion, like mini skirts and stuff. He had mini cars come on, all that sort of stuff to portray the 60s. So thank you very much for that. And we move to David's Retro Games Play Badly. Thank you, David. My salute to you. Keeping me company at work as usual, matey. I'm an arsehole every day. Laughing face. I haven't been to the cinema in years. Fairly sure the last film I went to see was Avengers Endgame. Can understand that, matey. The fourth indie film was dreadful. Yes, I've mentioned that. I remember the Spotter's Guidebooks. Oh, thanks very much. Airplane is a classic. Blazing Saddles is probably in my top 10. Yeah, of a certain generation, you see. These are where people turn around and go, have you ever seen this? And young millennials will go, no, what are you talking about? And this is where I don't want to feel a fossil. But fond memories of Airplane and all of that sort of stuff, you know? And I want to spread the word to people to say, this film's relevant, watch it. If I had to choose, I would go for gravy on my chips. I prefer the summer, mainly because I hate going to work in the dark. I think I have missed for the 3DO. I've been to Nerg, and it's a great event. As always, love the trailers, mate. Thanks for keeping me company, and it's been my pleasure to do that for you, David. I hope I keep you entertained as much as possible. And I do apologise if feel like I'm going or anything. I'm feeling okay at the moment, and I'm going to keep going as best as I can. So we move to Charlie Angel. Del Boy, what are your favourite handhelds? For me, I love the Game Gear, fantastic machine. Enjoyed the 3DS as well, also. Yes, handhelds. Had a number of handhelds. I suppose my favourite at the moment will be the Switch. However, I'm going to name one that's not in the norm, which is called the Pandora, which I had for a number of years, but I had to sell it to buy a refurbished engine for my car at the time because it blew up. It was an Astra Mark II, and I couldn't afford another car. So I had to sell my Pandora, and I regret doing that. And I told Mainmeister, whatever you do, don't sell yours, you'll regret it. And I still stand behind that comment. The Mr. may well can do it, but it's just, why bother when you've got the stunning machine itself? Yeah. Oh, other than to preserve it, of course. I loved the Game Boy. I had great memories of the Game Boy, the 3DS and the NDS. Yeah, the Nintendo DS. I love those to bits, and I can't really separate those two. And it might well be the easy pirateness of it all that made me love those consoles the most. But then again, they were bloody expensive to buy the games. And I've got quite a collection of them now, so I don't feel too bad about those because they've had my money out of me, believe me. Hope that answered your question, Charlie Angel. And moving on to Colin. Hello, Colin. Thanks, mate. I'm 100% with your mother on the hot weather. Tell her from me she's not alone with being a heat lover. No, everybody does not love Raymond. That program just makes my teeth itch. I understand that, yeah. I used to love text adventures until they became too complex with the parser. The Hobbit was probably the last one I enjoyed. Which is a shame because a lot of people liked games like Torremolinos, which is also, a Spanish place, Castle of Terror, and a number of other adventures. It's always sad to hear of a text adventure so far back as The Hobbit that you haven't experienced anything after that, which is a shame. Just going to move to the end now, Colin, so I do apologise, but you've said, managed to watch this in one sitting this week while dealing with a bug that has caused me to miss work. My question for the next blog is a simple one. What do you think of a musician that will always get a lot of respect from me? Herb Alpert? Herb Alpert. He's a trombonist, isn't he? Trumpet player. Yeah. I don't really know enough about your music history, Colin, for me to answer that question. I would think that you'd get a lot of respect from coders of the Commodore 64 back in the day, because I know you do your Sid show. So I'm going to leave it at that, really, for that one, and I hope that's a good enough answer. And we're reaching the end now. Think we've got Paul's asked a question. Paul Patrick. Hi, Dal. Do you have any strong memories of when your family got your VIC 20? Hi, Dal. Do you have a strong memory of when your family got your first VCR? Was it a Betamax ? Or VHS? Funny you should mention that. It was VHS, but I bought a second-hand Betamax in the first 6 months of us buying that and having it in my room, and that's because I learned pretty spot on early. The picture quality was better on a Betamax, and it's proven to be as well. And it's where you got a lot of films that you couldn't get in rental shops. So I bought a Betamax and I still have it. It's upstairs in the attic, not being used. But such a shame that one, the market wasn't big enough for both formats. Hope that's answered your question. Thanks so much for that. Seb's Place, he's put, enjoy having these vlogs in the background whilst I work on Monday mornings. Nice to hear your ramblings whilst I'll struggle with Monday morning motivation. Question for next week. I saw Bruce Springsteen in Hyde Park on Saturday. Epic 3-hour set for someone in his 70s. He can still certainly put on a show. So I'm curious, what's your best gig, or what was your last gig that you went to? Last gig. I've seen recently War of the Worlds, and I've been to the Albert Hall to listen to a couple of dedications to soundtrack. But I dare say it'll be an Elton John tour where he went to Watford, because I know that I went just before the pandemic started and he hadn't started his "This is my end of tours." If you see what I mean? So we are going back 5-6 years for me. Not a particularly great answer. And I think this is the last one with a question, and that's Milfy Swimbuckle. Question for your next blog, from Milfy. How do you want to be remembered? If you can please give me one serious answer to the question, and two not so serious. Have another bit more product placement. I obviously want to be remembered seriously, generous, kind, and loyal, and knowledgeable. Don't want to be remembered as an arsehole. And all I ever wanted was fun for my friends, and that I would also enjoy. That's definitely when I've been out. Never any other intention ever other than to pass on my knowledge, give a gift if I want to, and come away all smiles, because it was unexpected. And so I think I've mentioned what I'd like to be remembered for, and I think I've mentioned what I'm not prepared to be remembered for, which is an arsehole. And some people will say, well, you failed there then. So I hope that's answered your question there. Oh, and on a secondary question, a little bit of different take on Foodgate. If you had the chance to eat 3 mythical creatures from classic mythology, which would you pick for your lunch? And how do you think they would taste? And would they taste? And sorry, would there be any side effects from eating them? God, I've got to think of Greek mythology, have I? Right. I'm going to say a griffin, because I think a lion wouldn't taste too bad as part of the griffin. Minotaur, because that's mainly bull, isn't it? So man and bull together. Third. Gonna go with the Medusa, and I think she's based upon minions called gorgons. Yes, gorgons. So snakes. Not something that I particularly like to eat, but I've heard that they taste a bit like chicken. And it doesn't everything that we don't understand. So I'm going to go with those 3. I hope that's answered your question, Milfy. And salute to you, sir. And then Robert has commented on my blog. It's mostly just wishing me well, agreeing with things. Nothing really to read out. I'll just read out some of it. Great Dell, as usual, working around our place again still, and not be able to sit down at a desk. Why my comments will be a bit limited. Yeah, totally understand that. So thanks very much for the comment, and that appears to be it for the news. Thank you so much to everybody that commented. That's brilliant. So now we move to what I've watched on TV. So I'm going to keep my head down a little bit here. What I've watched on TV. You know that there are certain staples, ones that I constantly watch, and I watch quite virtually every week. And there are others that I see on occasion. Do you know what I mean? So I've watched This Week in Retro, which had 3 subjects. 80s inspired B&B plus arcade in the basement. ST MIDI Mazing, which was about the ST and how MIDI came about and what it meant to the sales of the MIDI. And Is It Retro ? Where somebody brought up a question and said, what is the point where something is not retro? And of course, Maymeister hates the word retro and likes to call it vintage, and I go, Retro to me is a shortened abbreviation of what's the word I was looking for? I had it on the tip of my tongue. A retrospective of something in the past. So not necessarily is it something that's donkey's years old, but it's a retrospective of it. And I stand by that. I love doing that, and I consider my channel retro because I'm talking about stuff so far in the past that some people won't even remember it, and so hopefully those people are gaining some background information. So that was this week in retro. Techmoan then did he did a sort of a review of something called Spectro Display. What it is it's a box with a microphone in it so it can pick up sound, a charging port at the back, and a couple of buttons at the front, and you get those bouncing lines, graphic equalizer type stuff. And it also has a record and CD holder. And I thought that was really good until I saw the price. Price just went totally out the window for me. There was no way that I was paying that. Brilliant to watch. Definitely give that one a watch and a listen. LGR. Now, LGR has been busy this week because why was he? Yeah, what was I going to say? He was busy, wasn't he? Because he was opening his tech mail. So people send him subscription mail, and it was in 2 huge piles. And going through it, he was given so much stuff, graphic cards, sound cards, memorabilia, all sorts of stuff. I'm sure his room is a treasure trove of stuff, that or it's just a hoarding mess. 8-bit show and tell. What did I put for 8-bit show and tell? Yes, so 8-bit show and tell is a great channel because he does stuff on the Commodore 64, and he's always highlighting things like bugs that have been in games for donkey's years, and he's got round to fixing them, and then advising you how you can recompile and get stuff out to the shops. And he did this week on a game called Livingston, I presume, which is by Alligator Software. Just about remembered that game, but apparently, according to him, you get halfway through something like the 35th screen, it would crash to desktop. Basically, bang, straight out. He found out what the problem was, but then how do you get that onto the tape, which has got protection on it? So yeah, conundrum, and I hope you get around that one. Partman QC, he did a Sega Saturn retrospective, and I found it very, very interesting. I'm not the biggest Sega fan, but all in all, these bits that bolted onto the Mega Drive or Genesis, they were either worth their money or not, and for the majority of it I would have said not, but as they became to the bargain bin, then of course people flooded to them. To give you a clue, the Sega 32X came out at £140 when it was new. Within 6 to 8 months, it was down to 50 quid. So there we go. And Movie Collector did 3 reviews. He did Contra 3 in 4K, Lair, Blu-ray up and coming, which he wants to get everybody to know, and The Firm 4K. All of those films I've actually got on 4K. It was nice to hear his thoughts, and I do so look forward to your return of your cat, matey. Other than the last bit, which is very important to me, I watched Playtendo Guy and Rocket God quite a lot recently, and they invited me onto their movie panel on Wednesday, and it was such a great experience. It was a bit long, 6 hours, but we talked about films, TV, scores, all sorts of stuff, toys from our past. So I really do ask you to look at their stuff. There'll be a link in the list, and consider supporting these guys, because once their stuff's gone, this stuff's gone. It's gone. You can't get it back. An awful lot of it. So Play Tendo Guy and Rock God equally had videos that are great, such as unboxing what I bought this week, questions and answers with people, plus they appeared in the chat channels themselves. So please, if there were two people that I could recommend to bring along to a dinner with you, it would be Play Tendo Guy and Main Rock God 2004. And now we get to the Your TV stuff. So I've been watching The Normal Suspects, but I tell you what, it's nothing terrible about that. All your products that you make are absolutely fantastic, and I couldn't fault one of them. So the first one is Down the Rabbit Hole. My God, he's been busy. He did a drink blue Curacao and cream soda mixed. It made this horrible purple concoction, and he got great enjoyment out of it. He said actually it was quite nice. Great for him. I don't think I could do that. Ugh, sounds awful. There was another one where it's called Does the PlayStation 1 Roll Cage Work with This Game? And it was another game, and it worked better. Forgot what it was called now, but the vehicles have big tires on, and you've got a small vehicle in the middle, and if it then flipped over, it could drive on its roof. Lovely animation to that as well. So thank you so much, Down the Rabbit Hole. Look forward to your next video. LFC did a blog. He did a question on the Heart Foundation, which is what I touched upon at the end of my news. And the rest was just for him to pick up and stuff to give to other people's houses, because he's, I think, renting a place. We then moved to LFC Gamer and Vlogs, and his blog was interesting this week because it was about Hugh Edwards, which I have an opinion on. But it was also talking about his purchases this week, which is brilliant, and about VHS tapes. And it's that's really important to me, because not many people talk about those things much anymore. Then we moved to Steve's Gaming, and he's going hell for clappers down a road called The Great and Grotty, for which he's up to 3 episodes on. So he's loaded up random games, and he said to them, should they be considered great or should they be considered grotty, in his opinion? And for the most part, it's really working. There's been a couple of exceptions where I've said, I would never put that in the bad games. Maybe I ought to do a bit of research and play it myself. Something to think about there. Then we've got Robert's Retro Gaming, and he's been a busy lad again. He's been playing Minecraft. He's also done 8-bit GIF animation, 8-bit Moon Patrol, Plumero, and Pac-Man Concept Maze. All 4 of those games, I think, were on Atari or Commodore 64 and looked wonderful. Roberts is definitely a channel that every now and again you should go and see, even if it's just to see how it's done. He's a remarkable person. I definitely watch him every week. Great. 20th Century Games had the hardest time because he started to get his life in order, and then all of a sudden, he's not feeling very well. He's not been feeling very well at all this week. Loss of energy, swollen up lips, I think he's there. So he's got a number of things that I wish him better on for the future, and do wish you well. Mainmeister did his Friday waffle, and Nice and Nasty episode 4. So my friend Mainmeister is still bringing out at least 2 videos a week. It's hard going if you've ever been a person in my position where you have to talk in front of a camera. It's sometimes very difficult to get the right aspect on things. And then Magda did a shout out to me, which I loved it. She showed me a holly bush. She was building some rack mounting, shelving, again functional, and they seem to be getting a bit closer into the show. Don't know how that one's going to end up. And then we get to what I've watched, which isn't an awful lot, I'm afraid, but I did watch Star Trek Strange New World, I watched Star Wars, I watched Arctic, and I watched a couple of films, Dream Spot, Saturn 3, and Phase 4. And I'm going to show you some of those videos right now. So I'm going to put you into video mode. Can't see the cursor. There it is. There we go. That's better. Like I say, I do apologise, but it's very dizzy for me at the moment. I'm perfectly okay, but just dizzy. We're going to play some video back. These are trailers that I've watched this week. Hope you enjoy. Ooh. There we go.
You are condemned to death sport.
In the year 3000, all freedoms are crime. There is just one penalty. Death sport. David Carradine and Claudia Jennings are super warriors.
I am my only master.
Lovers, imprisoned and separated with only one chance for survival.
Fight me. I'll see you both in hell.
It's a future war on wheels fought astride high-powered death machines with blasters and laser guns.
I can survive your death sport.
There are no Olympic Games, World Series, or Super Bowls. There is only death sport. David Carradine conquers the death sport.
In an isolated sector of our solar system, suspended in orbit around the 6th planet from our sun, lies a distant outpost, a technologically perfect world where mistakes are impossible, because the impossible is unthinkable. It is called Saturn 3. Each year for 22 days, a solar eclipse plunges this outpost into shadow lock. Total darkness. All communication is terminated. This year, the inhabitants of Saturn 3 are about to experience the unthinkable. A nightmare so perfect it could only have been made by man.
Captain, Major, this is my partner.
There are only 4 inhabitants on Saturn 3. one of them is not human.
No! Don't let him touch me!
Do as you're told. Be still.
Get back! Get back!
He desired something beyond love.
I might make the new woman, Clavell, independent, free, and a fit companion for
the genius of Frankenstein.
He created something beyond woman.
Beautiful.
Where did I come from?
She'll break a few hearts, will she not?
Who is she, Charles? What is she?
You must obey me.
I will not obey you! You didn't create me! You didn't create me!
As a matter of fact, I did.
Sting. Jennifer Beals. The Bride.
Yeah, so thank you for bearing with me, by the way, with some of the things that are going on. I've not been feeling very well at all, and dizziness and everything makes it very difficult to read and keep your sort of like mind focused. But the reason that I showed you those clips just there, though, in the media players, I love doing the media bit as totally, but I usually do it because I'm showing you something that I've bought this week. I've had a very bad week when it comes to stuff that's turned up this week, because I've had two things turn up and both were bust, and I've had to send them back, which means that I've got nothing. But the only thing I can really show you is something that I've had from day one, but I've never got round to playing yet, and that's the Zelda game Tears of the Kingdom, which is prominently featured on Mainmeister's podcast, believe it or not. But I've had this since day one, right? I had this sent ages ago, on the day that it was released, and I've never played it. You can see that it's from Germany. It's the collector's version, but I've been meaning to get to play it, and I'm intending to do that this afternoon. But again, if I'm concentrating on a screen, I get dizzy. And if I get dizzy, I have to stop. And it's just terrible for me at the moment. So I showed Death Sport, Saturn 3, Phase 4 and The Bride, because those were films that I watched before I went to bed this week. They were in various places. Some of those I've got in my own collection on Blu-ray and so forth. Others from Talking Pictures or Great TV, which are free channels that you can get just through digital, digital aerial. So definitely all of those I had great enjoyment with. Saturn 3 is a classic. Phase 4 is a classic. Death Sport was just enjoyable. Bad special effects, 1978 fodder. The Bride, an unusual take on Frankenstein, with Sting and Jennifer Beals from Flashdance. Again, just great to sort of reminisce. And because what I watched on TV this week has been a bit, again, very difficult with the dizziness. I mean, I watched Star Trek Strange New Worlds, as I've always done, and Secret Wars and Ark. And I'm looking forward to picking up some of these shows that you've all been telling me to do so. And Ark has just finished. So that frees up at least one spot for me, because I try to watch 3 new things this week, each week. So the other 2 shows are still going at the moment, but Secret Wars is coming to an end. I think we're up to episode 5 next week, and I think it only runs for it's either 6 or 8 episodes. Don't think it's a long one. So again, I'm looking forward to that. And just to tell you sort of of a future thing that I'm planning to do an analogy of a tune. What I mean by that is I've listened to soundtracks and TVs all my life, and I think I know enough to make me able to break apart a tune and explain why I think it's popular, why people have affection for it. What is it about it? Is it chord progression? Is it the bass line? Is it the melody? Is it all of it? Is it the visuals and the audio together that make it the perfect tune? Because obviously we've got video, and some of these things come as TV themes. Just to give you an aspect of something like that. I can probably do something now, hopefully without getting a copyright strike. So if I just quickly pop to media playback, I'll play a couple of TV themes and just explain why they're there and why they might deserve a breakdown. Because there'll be some stuff here that goes, why have you chosen that? Crap. But I could probably explain away at the end. So I'm just going to mute my mic again and just play a couple of tunes that hopefully won't get a copyright strike. Here we go. This is something I haven't thought about doing.
Hello?
Harrison, I need your help.
Dad, you keep forgetting. I'm a lawyer.
You're the detective.
Oh, come on, son. All I need is a ride. What could possibly happen?
Working in a garage is not exactly Camelot, but it's where I met Zack. I'm a wizard who works alone. Not anymore. Now they tell me I need an apprentice. And he's it.
The Merlin? You have to be over 1,600 years old.
Well, I do 30 push-ups a day and I don't eat fried food.
Did you part the Red Sea?
Oh, I'm good, but I'm not that good.
And there we go with just a couple of things that I'm going to possibly discuss in a future show, and very eclectic sort of like list of TV themes there. You'll probably think to yourself, well, I quite like some of those, but what the hell have you put Crossroads in there for? What you have to understand about Crossroads is that it was done by Tony Hatch. And Tony Hatch did that in 1964. And this was at one of the heights of his career. He won an award for that. He also did Emmerdale, by the way, the Emmerdale theme. But he worked with David Bowie in his life. And he collaborated with Petula Clark and came out with the tune Downtown, which, if you ask my mother what's her favourite sort of like tune from the 60s, that would be one of them, Downtown. And I listen to that quite an awful lot and I go, wow, that's great. And another thing that I learned about Crossroads is that Paul McCartney and Wings were fans of the Crossroads theme and did a version of the tune that he gave permission for them to use in the actual TV show in the 70s. My God, who knew Paul McCartney likes that particular tune? But I'm really talking about what makes a tune. And if you were to listen to all of those, there is probably something in it, but you can't quite put your finger on that goes, there's something similar about all of them. Is it the drums, the percussion? Is it the melody? Or is it the bass line? Is it the type of instrument that's being used? And in fact, you wouldn't be far wrong with all of that. If you listen to, say, Joe 90, after the string instrument, I would say the standout instrument that you can hear is the bass. There's a very simplified bass motif of notes that is played constantly and looped through that whole tune. And you will find similarities of like that in the Tomorrow People that have been there. Crazy Like a Fox to me is a great tune because I love strings and pianos. But it also has a scale to it where it builds up and then down and then up and then down. And the piano is just basically sort of like a rampant amount of like chord, a single note just played over and over again. That's all it is, right? And then a flourish. And then it's the same. And it's the strings that keeps it going through it. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, there's lots of things that make up a tune. Chord progression, chords that emphasize each other, and complement each other. Chords that which don't complement each other, which brings a strangeness. Something I'm thinking about doing. But anyway, just off the top of my head, I thought it'd be a nice fun thing that I'm starting to think about doing along with games. And when it comes to games this week, what have I played? Believe it or not, I played more Spectrum games than I've played in such a long time. I did my 8-bit videos on Death Chase. But when I was coming up with which one I was going to play, some of them were Trashman, Trans Am, PSST, Jetpack, and Manic Miner. And I chose Death Chase over all of those. So, did I choose wisely? You let me know. And again, like I say, apologies. It's been a bit of a strange and odd one this week. I'm going to get some fresh air now, clear my head, get the papers for my mother, and I've hoped that this doesn't get a copyright strike and come out so late that you're not able to watch it during the boredom of the afternoon compared to the better stuff on in the evening. So with that, I'm going to say salute. Thank you so much, and have a great week. Bye-bye.